Let's talk about EaganMatrix I/O. After you have your module cabled, installed, and powered, the first thing you'll likely want to do is connect that up to a mixer or output module. Your stereo outputs can be connected directly. There's a little switch here that you can access with a stylus without having to take the module out of the case. That will set -12 dB line or 0 dB Eurorack levels, depending upon where you want to send the outputs to. Then, assuming you want to play the module only through CV, you'll need some kind of CV source, a CV keyboard maybe. Maybe you want to play this through a sequencer and some VCAs instead. To do this, send 1 volt gate to W, 1 volt or greater, then 1 volt per octave pitch into X, and finally 0 to 5 volt envelope into Z. This will play most presets just the way you have it here, but you'll want to do a few more things as we discussed in the opening use case video. Y is used in many presets on the Continuum front to back motion, but on the EaganMatrix module, it's just another parameter that can be controlled through CV that might do various things depending on the preset. Not all presets use it. I like to use a foot controller, connect the continuous pedal to that, and control Y with my foot while I'm controlling other things with my hands, but you can use any continuous CV controller to control Y that you like. The macro controllers, these are used by a lot of presets. Some use them, some don't. Some use 1 or 2 of them, some use all of them. These are used to control things like timbre, filter cutoff. They might control convolution amount. They might control the amount of reverb a preset uses, all kinds of things. I always want to connect up some kind of controller to them. I like to use faders, but you can use any CV controller you like. I like to always connect them up and leave it that way in case I load a preset that uses them. I have it handy. And this is pretty much your CV control for most all presets. And when you play a preset through CV, you'll play that preset monophonically. But what if you want to play polyphonically? Well, you can do that by playing through MIDI. So you can connect up a MIDI controller, hear a instrument, but you could use a MIDI keyboard, any MIDI controller you like. I'll connect that to the TRS Midi input because this has a DIN output on it. I'll use a DIN to TRS adapter. The module comes with 2 of those, and I can play the module with up to 8 MPE voices this way. Most presets are set for MPE mode, which means they will take MIDI inputs on channel 2 to max polyphony of the preset plus 1. So if you have a preset that you load that's set to play 8 voices over MPE, you'll send that MIDI data on channels 2 to channel 9. Or what if you don't have an MPE controller and you just want to play standard MIDI? You can play with up to 8 voices on channel 1 with a regular MIDI controller if you like. Now, not all presets are set to play with 8 or more voices. So if a preset only uses 3 voices, that's the max number of voices you're going to be able to get out of that preset over MIDI. Now you can play with CV and MIDI at the same time, no problem. The only thing there is if you play the same MIDI notes, you could get some discontinuities and other sonic artifacts perhaps if you're overlapping MIDI controls, so you just got to be careful. I typically will use one input for playing notes and another one for control if I want to use multiple controllers. I can also connect up a computer to the USB port. This is class compliant USB, so you don't have to load a USB driver. That computer can run the Haken editor. That editor can be used to display presets, edit presets, and most importantly, download firmware. You will need the editor to download firmware, and the editor can run on a PC or a Mac. Another good reason to use the editor, even if you're not desiring to use a computer with your setup, is to bring up a preset, and it will have help information in the lower right hand corner for that preset, and that help information will tell you what the preset is, what it does, maybe a bit about how it's programmed, but most importantly it will instruct you on what all the controls for that preset do. what microcontrollers 1 through 6 do. As you notice, you can only access microcontrollers 1 through 4 on the front panel, but if you go into the menu system, press the octave plus and octave minus buttons together, you go into the menu system, then you can navigate to controllers 5 and 6, and using the rotary you can in real time change those as well. The menu system can also do other things like change the attenuation of the module. It can set rounding, can change EQ settings, a few more things. And then I can set the MIDI output switch to the MIDI position, and whatever I play on this module, it will convert that to MPE MIDI output. So if I play the module either through MIDI or through CV, the module will convert that to MPE output, and here I've connected a Continuum to that, but you can connect any MPE device. Because this is outputting MPE, it will output according to the MPE priority you set. And if I set it to the default oldest priority, it will cycle through MIDI channels per note, even though I'm playing monophonically. So let's say the preset is set for 8-voice polyphony, and I play my CV keyboard and the output is set to MPE oldest priority. I will cycle through 8 MIDI channels as I play each note. One thing that I always like to do to predict what MIDI channels are coming out, especially if I'm playing monophonically, is set the MIDI priority to lowest. That way you'll always play on the lowest channel if you're playing monophonically, which will be channel 2 if you're set to MPE. If you set out of MPE, in other words, in the editor, you set that preset where Z perhaps is set to CC11, well then you will output, if you're set to lowest priority, always on channel 1. I have a video that explains MPE on Continuum devices. And remember, the Haken Audio EaganMatrix module is basically a Continuum Mini without the fingerboard, but with CV inputs and audio inputs. So finally, I might connect up some audio inputs to my module if the preset processes audio. Not all presets do. To test this out, there's a category called PR, Processor Preset Category, and all of those process audio in some way. Some add delay, one of them takes the voice and ring modulates it with a couple oscillators already on the module, and there are some presets like the Choir and EXT preset, which is one of the default user presets, which takes an analog input and uses that to control the format generator if you turn up the audio level for that input. So I can connect up, say, a guitar to an instrument interface. I can send that into the right channel, and if the preset processes the right channel for audio, you're good to go. I might connect up a microphone to another instrument interface and connect that to the left channel. And again, if the preset is processing the left channel in some way for audio, that will be fine. Or I might have some presets that expect a stereo input to be processed. It really depends on the preset. And again, if you look at the help information in the editor on that preset, that'll tell you how it processes audio if it does. And now let's take a use case. We'll take an EaganMatrix module, we'll send the output to my mixer. I'll connect up my computer because I want to see what the preset is doing and maybe even change that a bit if I want, though you don't need to know anything about EaganMatrix programming to use the module. But if you like, you can bring up the editor and create your own presets or modify existing presets. I'll play this module with an instrument. I'll connect that up with the DIN to TRS adapter that comes with the EaganMatrix module. It comes with 2 of them. For macrocontroller control, I'll use a CV fader module, and I'll set the I2C MIDI out switch to the I2C position because I'm going to connect up to an Evaton Technologies uCVC. And when I play the first module with the instrument, in addition to outputting to the mixer, I'm also going to play the second module with the output of this uCVC. That'll send the gate, pitch, and envelope outputs into my second EaganMatrix module. So I'll play the first module with up to 8 voice polyphony over MIDI, and the second module I will play monophonically with CV from the uCVC. Then I'll connect up my pedal interface to Y as we discussed before in case I want to use that. And in this case, I'm going to use an Arturia BeatStep Pro as the controller, not a fader module. In this case, I can program up to 16 rotaries to do all kinds of control, not just control only the macro controllers. I can control, in this case, all 6 of my macro controllers because I have rotaries for them. I could go into the menu system and control 5 and 6 with the rotary if I like, but with all these rotaries, it's a lot easier to use them to control the module. I also have programmed some of them to turn on rounding, change attenuation, change output level, change EQ settings, and finally, I programmed the buttons, there are 16 of them, to bring up one of the 16 user presets when I press it. Haken Audio will make both BeatStep and BeatStep Pro configurations available to you if you want them. Then I'll set the output of the second module to MIDI out, and I'll connect up a Haken Continuum to the MPE MIDI output from that. So now, when I play the first module over the instrument, I'll not only get the output of that module going to the mixer, I'll also play the second module from the uCVC, and that uCVC input will be converted to MPE MIDI output that will play the Continuum as well. And finally, I'm going to take the analog outputs of the second module at Eurorack level and send them as analog inputs to my first module that has a preset running that processes analog inputs in addition to processing sound on that module as well. In this case, the choir and EXT preset. So there you have it. I've used 2 modules. I've used all the different I/O possibilities in a use case that will make sense when I play it. And I didn't need to use a second module as the input to the first. If I wanted, I could use a Eurorack VCO or some other Eurorack synth and control that through CV and send that into my preset as analog input if I wanted to. But since I had to, this is a good use case to show you how you can use all the different I/O on the EaganMatrix module.